Hi everyone, and welcome to our Women in AI panel talk. Here with us today we have Niamh Donnelly, the co-founder of Akara Robotics. We have Letizia Mariotti, computer vision engineer for Provizio, and we have Alessandra Sala, the Ireland ambassador for Women in AI and the director of AI and data science for Shutterstock. The moderators for this talk are myself, Katie. I'm the head of marketing Formula Trinity, and also a control engineer for our autonomous racing team, and Katherine, Hardgrave, the business and operations co-lead for our autonomous team. A bit about Formula Trinity. We're a student-led organisation of about 80 students, and we have two teams: an internal combustion team made up of 50 or so students, and an autonomous team made up of 30 students. So this talk is in relation to our autonomous team, and our IC team will be competing in Formula Student UK this summer, and our autonomous team have just launched their new competition called AI Grand Prix. So if you want to take part in that, sign up through our website. I'll pass it on to Alessandra Sala now to speak a bit about Women in AI.
Thank you, Kate, for the amazing student organization that you guys are part of, and for inviting us today to this event. So Women in AI is an international non-profit organization. We are in more than 115 countries around the world and have more than 40 active ambassadors in those different countries to help this community to attract more women and diversity into AI. It's not just a women community, but it's a community that embraces diversity and the support of many amazing men colleagues that help us in this journey to promote female talent. It's very important to showcase how many women are in the field and to educate more. So in Ireland, we have participated both on local activities and on global activities. And one of our most important one is around education, how we can provide support and reskilling opportunity for many women. And I'll share a link where people can find all the education paths that we have made available both in Ireland and internationally through our Women in AI website.
Amazing. So yeah, we just recently partnered with Women in AI, and this is our first collaborative event, so we're really excited about it. We have an amazing panel with Niamh, Leticia, and Alessandra. Katie and I were both studying mechanical engineering in Trinity, and I'll just let our panelists actually introduce themselves. So Niamh, do you want to just tell us about the current projects you're working on?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. So my name is Niamh Donnelly, and I'm a co-founder and director of AI and software at Akara Robotics. And at Akara, we build robots, as I'm sure you can imagine, but specifically for the healthcare industry. So before the pandemic, we were working on a robot called Stevie, who is a social robot built for interacting with people. Kind of cute little, looks like a mix between R2-D2 and C-3PO. And the idea behind Stevie was that Stevie would be deployed in nursing homes and senior care facilities to kind of be a companion to older adults who might be suffering from social isolation or loneliness. And my job working on Stevie was to build out his computer vision system, so being able to recognize who Stevie was talking to and how many people were trying to interact with Stevie. So that was a really interesting role. But I guess when the pandemic hit, nursing homes were kind of closed and we couldn't travel. So the team got together and we decided to work on a new project that might be able to help with the pandemic. So we built a UV disinfection robot that can autonomously move around hospital rooms, shining ultraviolet light on surfaces, which kills coronavirus and other viruses and bacteria. And I guess my role is to write the software for that, and specifically probably the main part of software for that would be the autonomous navigation. So being able to move from one point in a room to another without crashing into anything, which is quite difficult in a hospital setting because they're quite crowded settings. So it's a very challenging task, but I really love it. And I suppose I'm as a co-founder in the company as well. And part of my role is trying to raise funding and working on getting grants and things like that as well. So that's another part of the work I do as well.
Really interesting and amazing to hear that opportunities have actually arisen for you because the pandemic is on. I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that later. Also, you said you're a computer vision engineer. We're also joined by Letizia, who is also a computer vision engineer at Provizio. So do you want to tell us a bit about what you're working on at the moment?
Hi, thanks for having me. And I'm a computer vision engineer at Provizio. So Provizio is a company, is a startup that deals with accident prevention in the automotive field. So the reason behind Provizio is that let's say a lot of focus has been given by the industry to autonomous driving, but even if a lot of resources have been spent in this task, let's say, there have been many advancements in this field, and we feel at Provizio that the topic of accident prevention has been kind of left behind. So what we're trying to do is to develop some system for vehicles, so that it is possible beyond it's possible to go beyond the, let's say, the human reaction time that is needed to prevent an accident, since 90% of the accidents are caused by human error. And so our aim is to give more time and to see beyond what the drivers can usually see. And to achieve this, we use a system of in-house developed radars, very long range, and also a vision system long range. And my role at Provizio is to look after the vision side, so to look at the cameras to kind of complement what the radars do.
Yeah, also super interesting. We were actually talking to Barry Lunn a couple of weeks ago, as part of our AAPO campaign. We did an AI in Ireland panel talk as well. So it's really interesting to hear it from not only the CEO and founder perspective about entrepreneurship, but from an engineering perspective, which is really relevant to what we're doing as well. So now on to Alessandra. Do you want to give us a few words on what you're currently working on now?
Yes, absolutely. I'm currently at Shutterstock as Director of AI and Analytics. My background is in research. I've spent more than 10 years, first in academia and then in an industrial research lab, Bell Labs, doing AI on different telecommunication data. And in particularly, I was working a lot on natural language processing system. And at some point, we realized that we are constantly overwhelmed by information, communication, email, text, social media, news. And I started working with a neuroscientist. And we were trying to understand different way to encode text-based information, which is very difficult and expensive for our brain to digest, and how to evolve into representation that were more agile for our brain. And then when this opportunity with Shutterstock came, it was just mind-blowing for me, because visual, imagine a company which has 400 million only images, plus video and music and other information. So you have an ability to represent the world through visual artifacts that are authentic, in most cases, stocky in some other cases, or illustration, but there is a visual ability to help us to transform the way we communicate, with exchange information in a way that is so much more in tune with our cognitive ability, and speed up the possibility for us to exchange knowledge and could communicate with deeper information and less time. So in general, at Shutterstock, we are working with text, we are working with image, we are working with music tracks from different provenance. We have contributors for everywhere in the world. So it's the highest diversity contributor network that represents the world, how they see the world, how they capture the world from every angle of our planet. So there is a diversity that has been interesting from a content perspective, but also from an AI perspective. You guys know that when you have to analyze a lot of data, the problem with scale and cost are extremely difficult. So having a new advanced model that can help us to go through and analyze a large volume of data, it's definitely an important focus for us today.
Now, that's amazing to hear, especially like it is something we should deal with a lot. Like our poor computers at home right now are struggling with COVID with all the work we're doing on them. So it's very cool to hear you're doing a lot of work with making it more digestible, the data. I guess we'll go on to the opportunities and how you got to where you are. So Leticia, you're in quite a niche market or like field right now of AI. How did you get to that situation? Like what course did you do in college to get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I think one thing you can say, if let's say you look at my CV, is that definitely when I started my studies, or I can say I never thought I would end up working in the automotive industry, and so what I knew that I wanted to study was some scientific subject, and I chose physics because I was really interested in know how the world works and how we understand the world, and so that's what was my, let's say, the main thing that brought me to physics, and in particular also I have studied astrophysics, which you can think is one of the farthest thing you can imagine from automotive, but then I realized one of the part that I enjoyed the most about the astrophysics was actually extracting information from images, and which is then what brought me to Ireland to do my PhD in image processing. Again, it was image processing, but a different type of images. So now I was looking at medical images, but still, I like to think that I kept the topic of extracting information from the world through images as my field, and then I ended up working for Valeo, which is close to Galway. I attended the university in Galway, UIG. So then I got a job as a computer vision engineer in Valeo, which is in Tuam. And so then when I started to work as a computer vision engineer, I really enjoyed the part where, again, I was still looking at the world, extracting information from it, but still in a slightly different way. And one thing I can say is that, at least personally speaking, I feel like I still feel like I'm carrying with me all my physics studies, in the sense that the part of looking at the world and understanding how it works and solving problems is present pretty much everywhere, and I can still I think I'm still using this every day in my everyday work life.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear that there's two different ways of like working with images, because you're working with cars and then Alessandra is just focusing on the image itself and trying to understand it. So it's a very cool, interesting like panel to have here tonight as well. Alessandra, you started in Bell Nokia Labs. How did that opportunity come about to you? What did you study in college to get to that?
Let me unmute myself first. So I did my PhD in computer science, and at the time I was working on large-scale content retrieval on peer-to-peer network, because at the time those were actually very cool protocols to work with. So it was in the telecommunication space, so routing protocols. But then as I finished my PhD first in Switzerland at ETH, and then I moved to US, I started to use social network data, large-scale data. I had a background in graph theory, so I was always interested in those data sets. I started to bring those data sets more and more in the kind of algorithms that I was working with, and I kept developing those skills during my stay in US. And in 2012, I felt the need to come back to Europe. I'm Italian by origin, as you can hear from my accent. accent, so I wanted to get closer to Italy. And I got this amazing opportunity to work with Bell Labs. I was in academia. So when you are in academia, you really feel that you want to stay in academia and never leave. But then Bell Labs is such a special place, because in Bell Labs you can do fundamental research. It's very similar to academia, but you have one foot in industry and you get to learn really practical problem, and you start to love them, like you guys. Now you know that you have a real problems that you can move and you bring to the world. And that's what happened to me. I got more and more interested to solve problems that could be used from someone, could impact someone. So I kept loving having this attachment to reality and not just working on academic interesting problem, but not really much tied into application. And I keep continuing into this direction. I love to work on problems that have a human impact. And many of the things that we do in Women in AI as well are projects that have this application back thought. For example, AI, how can we use AI for gender equality? So to bridge the gender gap. So using and developing application use case that can help women to integrate better in the workforce, to be able to support around the different needs that we may have.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear that you're using AI to make the workforce like a safer place, a more comfortable place for women to work in, and to get more women working in the field, because it is such a cool field to work in. I know growing up, I didn't think I'd be working in AI, and then I found out about it more as I grew, and I was like, I really want to work in AI. It's a very cool field. And just like you were solving problems, though, Niamh is solving problems with her Violet, the robot. Niamh, how did you get involved with Akara originally? Like, what did you study in college?
So I originally studied mechanical engineering as well. And no offense, but I absolutely hated it. It's a great career to have, but it just wasn't for me. And it wasn't actually until my final year that I worked for the first time on a software project. So I'm really glad I finished out my degree, but it was then that I realized that it's more kind of software that I wanted to do. And that's why I think engineering is a great first degree to have, because it was so easy for me to convert into a software position. I just did a 6-month conversion course to kind of build up my basic developer skills, and I was able to get a position at a US tech company called Etsy. And they're a really great company to work for. I got loads of experience. I got to work on lots of different teams, from the IT team to DevOps to software. And I think that was a brilliant first job for me. They were a company that had put a lot of effort into, diversity, and held it to really high esteem, like that you were a female in an engineering role, and they gave you a lot of supports in your career progression. So it was a brilliant company to work for. But I guess as I was working there, I was kind of seeing what was happening in the field of AI, what people and companies were doing with data and machine learning. And I just thought it was really fascinating how we can use an algorithm to predict something that, a human couldn't even predict. So that idea really fascinated me. So I quit my lovely job at Etsy and I went back to do my master's. So I did that in UCD in computer science, specializing in data analytics and machine learning. And I think that was one of the best career decisions I made to date, because, having had some industry experience and then going into a master's, I really knew this is the area I want to be in. And I was able to really apply myself. And I guess coming straight out of that, as I think anyone that finishes a degree, you're kind of just unsure about what direction you want to go in. I tried working for kind of insurance and banking companies in that sector, and it just wasn't really suited towards me. And I really did like the element of, we did a research project in UCD. So I actually, in a similar way, I liked the idea of kind of having a research role, but also being in industry. And so a startup in robotics is kind of good for that, because robotics is, I suppose, not well explored or completely explored field. So anything you're working in an industry is still kind of research. So yeah, it was a very roundabout way, but I saw what rail robotics were doing in Trinity, which is the research group that build robots. And I joined them just as they were spinning out as Akara Robotics. So yeah, a bit of a roundabout way, but I feel like in any career, it's all about the journey.
Yeah, it's actually a bit gas you say that, because like I'm mechanical engineering now, and it's kind of when I was getting more involved with Formula Trinity Autonomous, I realized that I actually did prefer the kind of software things as well. So like we're obviously lucky enough to have been able to do this project kind of in college, which kind of, you know, makes us, you know, find the love for kind of, you know, AI and stuff, which isn't normally taught at even an undergrad level. In college, people normally do it in their masters or PhDs. And so just, it might be interesting, Alessandra, if you want to tell us how you kind of found your love, or what project you got involved in that you realized you wanted to get into data science and AI.
Trying to unmute myself. So the first one was I have been always in love with privacy, the concept of privacy. So that has been always something that had intrigued me during my research career. But then at some point, I really got an opportunity to work on it. And because we had so much data from social network, let me not say which one, but we had a huge data set. When I was doing those analyses, it was 2007, 2008. It was really at the beginning. But then we immediately realized the privacy risks of those huge data sets and the implication that could have had for normal people like ourselves. Or you think about your friends or your siblings, people that you care about, and you say, oh my God, this doesn't feel right. So I started to work on algorithm that could auto-generate synthetic data with the property of the original one, so that we could keep doing our large-scale analysis, doing unsupervised learning, but not on the real data set, but on the synthetic representation. So I was working with differential privacy for people that are interested in the privacy space. And then as we were exploring all these supervised and unsupervised model for in machine learning, I got to get in love with those models. And then, as you know, every year there are so many new things that you get to experiment and to play with. So once you start, you can never stop. It's like an addiction. I want to try how that works compared to the one that I love, right? So I kept going in that direction, but it really seeded in the interest in privacy for me.
So yeah, super interesting to hear that as well. Yeah, Leticia, do you want to ask? Do you want to answer maybe the same kind of question? An interesting project you've been involved on that kind of sparked your love for computer vision, AI?
Yeah. So as I was saying earlier, let's say I just started working in the automotive field a little more than 3 years ago. So 3.5 years ago, let's say. Before that, I was in academia working on different sort of images. I think on one side, let's say, before computer vision, one of the things that made me really fall in love with image processing was the fact that how much information we can retrieve from an image that maybe like also on the astronomy side, but not necessarily only astronomy, even satellite images or these sort of things, images that we look at. If I was to look at it, I would think, oh, this image is very noisy. I can't see anything in it. I don't get any useful information from it. But then if you have some knowledge of the type of sensors or some knowledge of the physical process that generated the image, you can actually retrieve a lot of information. Or in the sort of, or in the field of astronomy, you can retrieve a lot of information from something that is very far from you. And that was, let's say, the first part about the loving the image processing side, working with images, and on more recently, now on the computer vision and automotive field, I'll say that one thing is that when I was finishing my PhD, I really wanted to work into industry, or at least I tried to work into industry after being in academia, because I was looking for some more practical application of my work. Not that my work before didn't have practical applications, but I was more eager to see my work being deployed on something that I can see the effects, let's say, having a positive impact. And for me also, this aspect, generating a positive impact using my knowledge to create something positive, let's say, has always been a very important thing for me. And I found that in the automotive field, using my knowledge is in computer vision, for example, now as a method for preventing accidents, or for things such as assisted driving, so to help the drivers avoid accidents, or to stop brake the car when there is a pedestrian behind you and you don't see it because you're looking somewhere else, or there is an object that you don't see, or a small children is walking behind your car. You can't see it, but the cameras on your car do, and so they can brake for you and help you prevent accident. That is a kind of, I found that a very interesting and meaningful way to apply my knowledge. And let's say even more so now in Provizio, where our focus is exactly preventing accidents. And we like to say at Provizio that road accidents, as probably my CEO said a couple of weeks ago, we like to consider it a sort of global pandemic, in the sense that every year we have more than 1 million deaths in fatal road accidents, and this, even with improvements in the automotive field, this number of deaths hasn't improved. So instead of just accepting that there's going to be this number of deaths, we should try to do actually something to prevent them. And I found this like very interesting, and I was very happy to be able to join this project.
Yeah, no, Barry was very passionate about that cause when he was on a few weeks ago. He was also mentioning that you're trying to use radars more. How are you integrating computer vision with the use of radars there?
Yeah, so let's say we are, radar and vision have different characteristics, which is why using the two of them together can actually give us more information than a simple driver could have by looking at the scene. So what the camera gives you as information is pretty similar to what you would have as a driver. So you look at the scene, you can understand and classify what type of objects you see, if it's a pedestrian or a vehicle, and the benefit is also that they're cheap, relatively speaking, more than other sensors, and they're readily available. And there has been a lot of improvements and advancements in AI for such as deep learning and convolutional neural network to detect objects and road markings, traffic lights, and these sort of things. But on the other side, the downside of the cameras, which is also a limitation of the human driver, is that you can see behind the objects, and you don't know how fast the objects are moving and how far they are. You can get an idea by looking at their moving, or you know that a car is supposed to be that big, so you know that should be around that distance if you see it at a certain size. But you're just assuming it. Well, instead, the benefit of a radar is that it can give you this 3D information as points, and also the 4th dimension, which is the velocity. So it will give you where the objects are in the world and how fast they're moving. So by integrating the two of them, we're going to achieve this very long range detection and achieve more than the human driver can.
That's very interesting to hear. And it's very cool that you're using both of them as well. It makes a lot of sense. At first you're like, oh, and then it makes a lot more sense when you explain it like that. So very cool. Niamh, going back to you, you're working on Violet. How are you guys integrating AI and computer vision as well as like robotics into it too?
So I suppose the main one of the concepts behind Violet is that as a safety feature, because UV light, if you're very close to it, can damage the skin. We wanted to add an extra safety feature that could detect if there was a person near the robot. So through Violet's cameras, we can detect using a computer vision algorithm if there's a person in the scene. And if there is a person, we automatically switch off the light and a warning goes off. So that would be kind of a big concept behind Violet and would be one of our machine learning algorithms. But I suppose the thing is with robotics, you don't have a lot of power. If you don't want your robot to have to be charged every hour, you want to try run things as light as possible. So when running these algorithms, computer vision algorithms are quite heavy, and if you're running them on a 360 camera, it can be quite slow, and you need a lot of horsepower. So what I looked into was actually running AI on the edge, so running them on these kind of low power hardware GPUs. So Intel do one called Movidius, and it's just like a little USB GPU that you plug into your computer and you run the algorithm on it. So that area, I suppose, is the main kind of AI development. But then there's also the navigation system. So being able to move around a room is actually quite a difficult task. But moving around a room that's kind of big and open and there's not kind of overhanging objects, like if you think of a hospital like a CT scan where they can pull something down from the roof, a 2D LiDAR won't even catch that. So we had to really spec out Violet with a lot of RGBD cameras and lasers. And I suppose you always want to kind of keep your product as cost effective as possible. So in terms of building out the navigation system, we really looked at, the cost of sensors and trying to get a 360 view of what was going on around the robot. And then I suppose there's a lot of different navigation algorithms you can choose from. Some are for kind of busier environments where there's a lot of people walking around, and some are for kind of quieter environments where things are more static. So we really had to go into the hospital and test out these navigation systems, and that was quite interesting during a pandemic, because it was a little bit scary going into a hospital and actually testing out the navigation systems. But where we're at now is we're really confident in the ability for Violet to autonomously move around a room and clean it effectively. So I guess that's the navigation system is kind of the main part of Violet.
Yeah, there's a lot more safety features than I thought would be necessary for Violet. I hadn't even thought of the UV, so that's very cool to hear. Alessandra, you were talking about safety earlier, especially with privacy. How are you guys dealing with that?
More than with privacy, with the safety, we're looking at diversity, right? So always making sure that we have the latest developed to represent the world from all different perspectives, because those images are used to reach out to people, right? So we see images in advertisement, we see images used from news article for newspaper. So images are this world, this means for us to communicate. So communicating through the right meaning and bringing the right intent into the visual representation is something very important. Another aspect that is quite interesting to me are human aspect. So different people have different preferences. So how do you capture the human diversity in what I like versus what Katherine's likes? So representing not only the technical property of an image, so the technical quality, the noise level, some blurred level, but also how people feel when exposed to a specific image. What does that image resonate? Why did the image resonate with me, but it doesn't resonate with my friend? So I think there is a lot that we can learn with how we engage with digital content, and even more with visual content, because it has this very immediate, very natural response that we have. Once you read, you engage your thinking part of the brain. So the response is calibrated through a deeper thinking process. When you see something, your body responds and say, I like it, I don't like it. So understanding how we can expose and we can share information in a way that is equal to everyone, it's very important.
Yeah, no, very interesting to hear about that. And obviously your work with women in AI also obviously is so closely interlinked with diversity and creating equal opportunity for everyone, and, you know, creating these opportunities for people to learn more about AI and stuff. But just on a similar note to that, what kind of supports are there out there for women looking to work in AI, and were these supports kind of available for you when you were in, you know, mine and Katie's position, young college students trying to, you know, go into AI after college? So if Leticia, if you want to kick us off first, maybe.
Yeah, so I'm not really, let's say from my side, I'm not really sure how to answer this question, in the sense that as part of a woman in technology. For example, I discovered just about women in AI last year, and I saw that there was a conference, Women in Tech, I think, which I want to take part. Then the global pandemic hit, so I had to give it a miss. But before that, from the point of view of support, even during my studies or at work, I never felt that I was in a difficult position because I was a woman. But I can say that especially maybe during my studies, it helped to have a group of you could say support, but because he gave support, but it was really more a group of students. In my particular case, okay, I was studying physics, so there was a few girls studying physics, and the fact that there were a few rather than me being the only one in the class with only boys, actually it did help. The fact that all of the girls I know that were studying physics with me, they're all still working in technology or in science. And I think that the fact that we were kind of studying science science in an environment that was predominantly male, it did bring us close together, and it did help also to create a support group. But that's my personal experience.
Yeah, it's kind of similar for us. Like, we have so few girls in the team. I think we only have, 5 females in the autonomous team. So we're always actively trying to recruit more and more and kind of have those supports there as well. Niamh, earlier you were actually saying that Etsy was very good with, you know, workplace inclusion and making sure that everyone had a good workplace experience. So would you have anything you'd like to add on that, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's kind of really drastically changed over the past couple of years, because my undergraduate was about 6 or 7 years ago, and I was one of 2 girls in my course, and there was never anything brought up about diversity. There was no groups of women engineers or anything like that. And then actually even just within 2 or 3 years when I was working at Etsy, it had all that was the first time I had heard about it and how important it is to be inclusive. And Etsy did loads of things when hiring to make sure that they were being inclusive. Like, for example, when writing a job application, you have to make sure that the language you use is open to both men and women, because there's research that sometimes women might tend to think, I don't have that experience, I'm not going to apply for that. Whereas men will just say, yeah, I can do that, I'll apply for it. There's kind of a concept that might be preventing more women from applying for roles. It was a requirement that if you were interviewing someone, that you had to have a gender balance in an interview when you're just interviewing someone. So they did a lot, and like I've even had bad experiences when going for work internships when I was in mechanical engineering. People asking kind of even inappropriate questions. Like I was asked once, how would I, as a female, be able to tell a group of men in a workshop what to do at a manufacturing plant? And little things like that, like asking someone that question can, at a young age, can actually make them doubt themselves. So like that's one of the reasons I really respect the company Etsy, because if you ask that any question like that, it will be brought up, and that's not allowed. And they had these certain rules of what you can ask, what you can talk about in an interview. And they, they really tried to run a lot of meetups, and I think that's some of how it's changing now. Is women, I think, are getting together in meetups and being able to talk and share experiences, and that's bringing more inclusion into different roles. And also there's shining light on some of the problems in the tech industry, but it's definitely changed drastically over the past few years, and I think there's a lot more supports now, particularly through meetups and building out your network.
Yeah, I completely agree with you with there's more kind of attention being drawn to the problems that are actually happening. But not only that, but there is kind of more recently people drawing attention and highlighting the achievements of women in the industry, kind of providing those role models for young people, not undermining their abilities, and they think they are capable to actually, do great things. And so yeah, Alessandra, obviously you're so involved with Women AI, doing absolutely amazing stuff, providing education, providing even just kind of role models again to young people for them to, know they can be successful in the AI field. So is there anything you'd like to add to this? Yeah.
Yes, a couple of things. One thing is it doesn't only start during the interview part of a journey to enter industry. It's very important. But even more important for me, being in industry, is to create a safe environment where people can strive, when people feel safe to say something different. Because once you grow diversity, then you need to create an environment where accept a diverse perspective, so that people can feel empowered to speak up, to provide a different view. And I think that's what happened with Google. They had the right intent to create this ethics group, but then the company possibly wasn't ready yet to hear those different perspectives. So we need to continue to support each other to be able to be stronger and supported, that we need to speak up, we need to bring a different perspective, because there is a lot of value in those diverse perspectives. And on top of that, I like what Katherine said. Let's stop to talk about women and bring more women to industry or to different position or to different seniority level. No, it's about talent. Let's think about how do we showcase talent. So I love what you said. Let's use success stories of people that have achieved to build a system, to launch a new startups, to create a new idea, to publish a research paper as cases of talent. We need to showcase that females are talent in AI as in any other technology field. And with women in AI, because we have this specific focus, not to promote just women, but to promote talent. We have practice group. So it says, okay, we are basic level, elementary level in AI. It doesn't matter. Let's come together. Let's work on a project together, and let's learn together. And the learning journey, it's more important than being an enthusiast in the field, but really learning the skill, learning it together it's very successful. We have seen so many people enjoying to be able to come in a group of 5, and we teach each other things and we search for a possible solution working together. It allows to create a strong community, a strong network, and to build technical capabilities in a way that then us as women in AI showcase through our event, through LinkedIn post, and say this person did this practice project and they achieved blah, blah, blah. So we showcase talent. And on top of that, really looking, each one of us need to take responsibility and inspire the generation before us to enter our field, because we know that it's fun. We know that there are many opportunities. We know that we need to have more younger generation to come and to support our journey. So use this opportunity to go back maybe to your high school and describe one of the projects that you're working on. You will inspire so many young women to follow your path and to do the things that you're doing that for us, for you now easy or natural. You have already achieved that, but for them there will be, oh my God, can I do that too, right? So inspiring the younger generation, it has to be our focus.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to hear. Like, inspiring young kids is such a big thing, especially seeing women in such talented women in high positions and like doing well and doing successful, not even like very high positions, is something truly inspiring. And we'll get a lot of more girls to be like, oh, I want to work in STEM, which isn't something that like has been seen in previous years, as Niamh mentioned. Going on from that, what change has not happened yet that you still want to happen? Because a lot of change has happened in recent years, but what would you still like to see changed? I'll go to you,
Niamh. I guess, yeah, making, sorry, is there an echo on my side?
No, you're okay.
I guess making the workplace a more inclusive environment is really important. You know, a lot of the percentage of women that actually study STEM from college actually end up leaving it. And I do think that is down to, you know, it's hard being, I've never worked on another team with another female throughout my whole career. And it's a hard thing to do. You know, and even now at Akara, we're such a small team that when we're hiring, it is important to make sure that we hire from a pool that is inclusive of gender, of diversity, of culture. It is really important to make sure that workplaces are comfortable for everyone. And I suppose as well as that, it is important to kind of have a stream of people that from secondary schools that are at least experiencing STEM subjects, because I think it's a really hard thing to do to go straight from secondary school into college and, you know, pick a STEM subject without having had any experience before. So I think putting more effort into that at a younger age. I mean, I went to an all-girls secondary school and there was very limited subjects. There was no engineering. I was told kind of by guidance counselors that maybe engineering wouldn't suit me. And I never knew why, because I really loved maths and there was, you know, other things that kind of made me suitable for that role, but really making sure that we're giving secondary school children the right opportunity and the right, you know, access to different subjects so that they can, you know, test out different sciences and test out engineering, technical drawing, these types of subjects. And I do think that it can be sometimes down to like all girls schools and all boys schools, maybe, you know, picking subjects for that. You know, making sure that it's equal at that level as well.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to hear. Like, it's quite obvious in Irish girls' schools, I think, that like you have engineering options in the guys' schools, but you don't have it in the girls' school. So it's quite like a good thing to like mention that getting it in the educational system, having inspirations like Alessandra mentioned, is a very good way to go about it. Leticia, you'd mentioned that you had like a group of friends in physics that kept you motivated. What else kept you motivated to go into STEM?
Yeah, let's say so. Probably the fact that I was really enjoying what I was doing. So I think, like, even when choosing the field of studies, I knew that like as Niamh said, that I was good at math. So I thought, well, I'll do something related to it, math, physics, or something like that. And maybe one thought goes also to the thinking, maybe I should try to choose a degree that, I don't know, will give me a job or will be useful for a job one day. Okay, we are lucky in the sense that AI is very popular now, is gaining popularity, so that won't be the problem. But on one thing that I thought at the time, okay, maybe physics is not. I'm not sure. It might have some like job applications later, but at the same time, what can you say of every degree? Like, you do something, maybe thinking that it will give you a job one day, and then maybe the job market changes, and it is not that easy to find a job anyway. So what always carried me forward was the thought, I do what I enjoy. I study what I enjoy studying, and I try to do what I enjoy doing, because it might be hard to find any sort of job anyway, but at least if you enjoyed what you're doing, like, you're not losing time, let's put it this way. You're at least you won't waste your time, let's put it this way. Yeah, I can say that. Then maybe on some other side, I can also say that I was very lucky, probably on my in my academic studies, to have had the good supervisors, good mentors, and that always encouraged me. So that was a big part of it. But some part of that might also be given to luck rather than.
No, that's amazing to hear. It's kind of that saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So it's amazing to hear that you enjoy AI so much. Alessandra, you've worked in AI for over 10 years now. You must have experienced a lot of challenges based on your gender. How did you overcome those challenges, and how did you stay motivated?
So before I address this question, I also would like to follow up on what Niamh has said. I think there is something important to create an inclusive environment for women and to support each other. It's so important to support each other, right? Having an opportunity, once you grow into any space and you start to become successful, share your success with others, bring other people with you. It will make your success even stronger. It will help others to experience maybe less pain. So we can go now into your question. Sometimes it is painful, but does this pain comes from us and our internal projection of ourselves into the situation, or does it come from the real situation? For example, when you are the only one in the room and you are the only female in the room, and those are all senior people, much older than you, there is some sense of discomfort that maybe they don't even realize, they don't even feel, they are not even creating. It's just a projection that we have. So we need to overcome our own possible fears. Sometimes it's more internal than created from the situation. Some other cases is very real, and we need to fight for that. And one more thing that I want to add is sometimes we hear comment and we don't mind. And I've heard those comments towards me. Yeah, because you are female, for you it's easier. Yeah, you are good, but you are female, so it's easier for you than for me. And I never cared about those comments up to the point where that same comment was given to another female colleague that it was not just a colleague, it was a friend of mine going through a difficult moment. And that comment was very hard on her. And I realized that the reaction and the impact that that comment had on that person, that I cared so much, It wasn't something that I should have stopped when I first heard that comment towards me, because I knew that that wasn't the right comment to make. I deserved that position, and my gender wasn't even a variable to get there. But I didn't do because I didn't care. I was confident about me and about my opportunity. But when we hear comments that we feel that are not right, we need to stand for what we believe is not right. And from that moment, I never passed on a comment. I was always making sure that the person that was making any comment was called upon, and in a very nice way. Some people do it without even realize. So we don't need to be mean. We just need to be, I do not believe that that comment is the right one because I deserve to be there, da da da. And if I'm ahead about other people in my career, maybe there is some value in my skills.
Yeah, actually, so on that note, like back in February, we did our February campaign and we spoke to a bunch of women in motorsports about their careers and their experience as women in, obviously another predominantly male field. And yeah, one of them was kind of saying like, just ignore it and just move on and be kind of unproblematic. And some things are just kind of unacceptable and you do have to actually address it. I think we can move on to the Q&A now anyway. We have a question here. If you've ever been in a situation, where is it? Have you ever been in a situation where you felt if you were a man, things would have been different or easier or harder, if the situation might have been handled differently? So if Niamh, if you want to go ahead, obviously you said you haven't worked on any projects with females in the past, especially, so.
Yeah, and just to continue on what Alessandra said, I think the great thing about tech is that there is such a camaraderie amongst women. And like even when I worked at Etsy, although there wasn't any women on my specific team or in the Dublin office on the technical team, even women that I hadn't met before in other offices in Brooklyn or in throughout Europe would always, contact you or share something you'd done on Twitter or LinkedIn. And it's those little things actually make a huge difference. And I suppose not that things would have been easier or harder, but I have in the past like kind of downplayed my femininity a little bit. So I'm like quite a bubbly person, but I have felt like as well as Alessandra said, it's a little bit intimidating sometimes when you're in a room full and you're the only female and maybe you're a little bit younger. I've definitely felt that I've needed to kind of downplay myself and not be as feminine, which I absolutely hate, and I try not to do it, but it's just something that happens. But I guess as well, and a funny story just kind of popped into my head was one time when we were with Stevie the robot, we would do a lot of photo shoots with the whole team, and anytime a photographer would come in, if I was the only female, at one stage he kind of asked me to like hug the robot and put a lovey face on the robot, and it was just the weirdest thing ever. And I just remember I had kind of one or two of the guys on my team said, if Niamh doesn't feel comfortable with that, can we not do that? And I really felt supported. So it's also so important to have a male allyship around you as well, and for men to actually be included in the conversation and have some input, and if they see something as well, to bring it up, because it can sometimes, if you say it yourself, people can pass it off as that's just a small thing, come on, it's fine. But if someone else brings it up, and if someone it can really help and really support what you're feeling. So I guess if I have maybe thought that sometimes it might be easier if I was a man in certain situations, but having a male ally, it can really be a supportive crutch for you as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because our team is obviously predominantly male as well at Formula Trinity, and like having that female support network is obviously so beneficial to us, but there's so few of us that you do need the males that are to actually want to learn more about, like, a lot of our team is at this event right now, and it's really kind of encouraging for us to see that, because they want to actually learn more about, not just the challenges, but how they can actually support women in the industry and stuff. So yeah, I actually see Dylan has this question here. As a male-dominated field, would you say that men should be a voice for equality, or is it seen as a form of mansplaining? So Alessandra, do you want to give us a few words on that?
No, I think that the important thing is that we all come at the table with the equal right and responsibility to be part of the discussion. So we need to be inclusive and respectful beyond your specific ethnicity, gender, race, religion, and so on. So it's a field that is changing. It's a technology that is changing. It's a technology that requires a lot of attention. Just last week, the European Union has released a proposal to regulate AI in Europe. This is like for GDPR, a tremendous difference between other country and Europe. And I feel so proud of being in Europe, in a country, in a union where fundamental rights, human respect are so important. That the union is trying to create a safe environment for us to innovate, but also to protect every citizen in their union. So I think in the same spirit, the fact today it's more men-dominated, it's just a starting point. It's an evolving field. We have learned so much from our men colleagues. They support us so much. So I like what Niamh has said. So my best mentors and people that taught me how to believe in myself were men. So without them, I wouldn't be me today. So I think we need to acknowledge how much we have received from so many people to become what we are today, and everyone deserves that journey. Most possibly for new generation, it will be more of a mix. You will have mentors, female mentor and men mentors, but let's remember our beautiful mentors that we had in our career. I still have today people that support my career so much. So I'm just delighted that there are those people in the field.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I myself have a male mentor, and I feel like I've come out of my shell a lot more, because even when you see it online, there's like people being like, write emails with your white male persona because they don't care about anything. And I feel like having that male mentor is like pushing me out of the box a lot more, while having a female one is making me self-assured in myself and knowing that like I can do it. I keep myself motivated. So it's very cool to hear that aspect of it too. And the next question we have here is, I am very curious about the challenging project that the speakers have ever worked on, or the most challenging project that the speakers have ever worked on. If there is none that they can remember at the moment, what is the most challenging problems in their fields? So we'll start with Letizia. Oh, you're muted there.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, so a problem, like I say, I've been working on the automotive computer vision side is that was challenging for me was the fact. So I was working on the task of detecting moving objects, but only with the classical computer vision method. So I wasn't using any AI or any convolutional neural network. So my task was to use the methods we call classical because they were before it was available before the convolutional neural networks. So in our case, you have two images. You have a correspondence of points between one image and the first image and the second. You know how much the vehicle is moved, so you have to find out did that object move or not. Which if you think about it, like if you're like, even if you're an observer and you're sitting and you're looking at your surroundings, it should be pretty easy to say what is moving because everything else is not moving. But if you're moving yourself, then the task becomes much more complicated. And how humans, or the vision system that humans use uses a series of things, uses some context, and then you also recognize, well, that object as more or less that size. So it looks slightly different now, so I assume that in between it moved. But if you want to do it without recognizing the objects, it can be quite challenging. And there is also the fact that it actually can't completely be solved. So you can solve it for some categories of objects, for some type of objects, and some particular types of motions, but not for all of them. So that was so the challenging part itself was to achieve the best that is possible without using neural networks, and then see and then trying to fuse the result after that with other detection using other methods. So yeah, that was my experience.
That's very cool.
Sorry, I forgot to add. So this was challenging from the research perspective. So because I was given this task from the research perspective to come out with the algorithm and way to do it.
No, it isn't. It sounds quite complex. I understand why you found it so challenging. Niamh, what was the most challenging project that you've been involved in?
That one sounds really challenging. I can't even comprehend how to start doing that. But I guess on Stevie, coming in to do the person detection and recognition. And then I guess the idea was we wanted Stevie to be able to interact with a group and be able to kind of tell who in the group was talking to the robot. Were the people in the group happy to be around the robot? So we wanted to do kind of a lot of face detection, then recognizing and tracking a person from frame to frame. Then on top of that, we wanted to be able to do emotion recognition and integrate it all with the microphones and speech. So it was just a lot going on. And I think the idea of all of those things was a little bit overwhelming at first. And then also, as I said before, the kind of compute power that we had on Stevie wasn't very good. It couldn't even run one convolutional neural network, let alone 4 or 5. So trying to figure out a way around that. And I guess working at a startup is really hard because you can go to your team members for support, but in your area, you're kind of responsible for that. And it's kind of up to you to figure out a way around a problem. And at first I found that really daunting and I wanted to quit. But I'm really glad I didn't, because I feel like you learn a lot from taking on responsibility like that. And I think that was actually, rather than the technical part of it, I actually found the kind of taking on responsibility and taking over the direction of certain elements of the robot to be the most challenging part.
Yeah, no, that sounds very, very complex as well. You guys have had so many challenging projects. Geez. Yay, going into AI now. Alessandra, what about you? What did you find most challenging throughout?
There was one past project that I did when I was in research at Bell Labs that was very interesting and extremely challenging. It was motivated from the pervasiveness of fake news. And everyone was trying to combat fake news. And at some point I said, why don't we stop trying to detect whether this is truth or false, but why don't we put things in context? So imagine a world where you can take the opinion of everyone that is talking about something and represent the different claims. So for example, people talking about Trump or Hillary Clinton, and they have different opinion. There is some people that may share some ideas, some people may share other one. When you start to put everything in context, all those claims that points towards different subject of this discussion, and you start to represent the cohesive crowdsourced wisdom, then you start to understand why people think in a different way. And fake news that now have such a minimal impact towards the whole, because there are these smaller or less supported opinion, maybe less supported from fact, and so on. So it was extremely challenging from a technical perspective. You understand the variety that we use in our language, how we refer to things vary a lot, and how do you represent the intent that a person had in a specific sentence? Are you representing those? How do you combine those different claims so that you can see this global perspective? Because one thing that I observed, and I don't know if you share this experience with me, is when you lose your landmarks, you feel lost. For example, when I use navigation system, because I only look where I am, the street where I am and where I need to go next based on my indication, I'm completely unaware of the full picture. When I drive or I walk on my own, I always know in my mind where I started, where I am, and where I'm going. So I have the global and the local perspective. This is what's missing in the digital space. Sometimes we focus on the local, the news that we are reading or the tweets that we are looking at, but we miss the global perspective. And that losing those landmarks doesn't allow us an opportunity to validate or verify whether something is true or not. So that was a very difficult project from many perspectives. There are no labeled data, there are no good quality data. Technically, it's very challenging, but there are few publications that we managed to obtain out of that journey. And I think there is much more to be done. So for anyone that is interested, look at those kind of problems because they're very challenging but very interesting.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about trying to have a broader perspective, because a narrow perspective, just focusing on one thing. I see in the chat here, Donnelly was saying that like AI was accidentally used in a discriminatory way because they didn't have the perspective of other people from other backgrounds, from the documentary Code of Bias here. And it's really good to hear when a lot of people think of AI, they think of all this terrible stuff, but obviously the three of you are using for really good things, preventing road deaths and working in hospitals, amazing stuff. But yeah, Donald here is just wondering, there seems to be a lot of problems with racism and sexism being coded into systems like this. Is this the case? So maybe just if you want to say a few words on that, Niamh, do you want to start us off there?
Yeah, there's been some scary stories. Like, I'm terrified of people irresponsibly using these algorithms. And there was an Elon Musk quote saying, like, AI is the one part of law where we need to be proactive rather than reactive. And I think we're already nearly too late in some cases. So I think, sorry, am I cut off there? No.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, sorry, I thought everything just froze. But yeah, there's been a few examples I've heard of, like even, there was one case where they were trialing out using AI to sentence or to predict prison sentences, which is, crazy. I can't believe that I just don't think it's at the stage to do that yet. Other areas, where recruiting, I think it can be used in recruiting, and it can be used in these cases, but you need to be really careful. And, for example, they were using it in recruiting and they were offering kind of lower paid jobs to women and higher paid jobs to men. And like, just from a technical perspective, it will be really easy that's a big mistake to make. So if they're able to not foresee that, I think is huge. And if someone's carelessly making those types of mistakes, I would just be worried about how quickly and how fast we start implementing it into everyday society. And I think there needs to be more legislation against doing certain things with AI, and then also very strict legislation around how it's implemented. And obviously, I think it should be started off as maybe a guide in some of these cases rather than a final say. And it should always be, for now, if in serious cases, should always be double checked or have, a human interaction with it as well. But that's just my opinion on that. And I haven't watched that documentary, but I'm going to watch it now. I've seen it on my Netflix.
Can I add a little bit of a different perspective here? Because this is such an interesting discussion. So AI system, Niamh is perfectly right. So they have been proved so wrong in so many use cases, dramatically wrong. However, they gave us the opportunity to observe and see something that was going on in the society, completely undetected, untracked, unmonitored for years and years and years. So it's true that those systems are not behaving properly. However, because they were created and because they started to behave exactly how humans were behaving against each other, those discrimination were present in our society, and no one ever dared to monitor or to take action in a very systematic way. Today, we have an opportunity to observe, to measure, to monitor, and because of that, we can adjust our system and make sure that they do not perpetuate those mistakes that were perpetuated for so many years in our society. So I think you're right, Niamh. This is completely wrong to use those systems, but those systems has unveiled things that now we can fix and we can create a better society.
If I can also add something to the topic, on exactly what I totally agree with what Niamh and Alessandra said. And one thing that I always think about when I heard about this problem with the AI not being fair, for example, in the case of automotive, I think there was a case in the news that came up saying that black pedestrians are detecting not as well as white pedestrians, and that reminds me of a problem of a talk that I saw where they say that the main problem is not the algorithm itself, because the algorithm is doing what we're asking it to do. The main problem is what is our question, what is the question we give to the algorithm. So if we want to for example, we have a set of images, a lot of images, and we say tell me if this is a dog or a wolf, but it labels an image wrongly as a wolf because it's not looking at the dog itself. We find out later it's looking at the background or what's around the dog. Then we're asking the wrong question. And so I think it's a matter of understanding better what we're asking or how things actually work rather than using them blindly, as both Niamh and Alessandra said. And on one side, it also would make us think why or what we are using, and like the data available, which is the big problem of AI, I guess, the data, and how to make sure that what we have is balanced for the purpose that we want the algorithm to work for.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that's super interesting to hear, especially like you don't think of it with the pedestrians even, that it's not picking up because of different races. And that's, I hadn't known that, and it's very interesting to hear as well. Like even with animals, sorry, I hadn't, like, not even humans at that stage. So it's just the learning can introduce bias without you even realizing, and then it's the question. So it's very cool to hear. So one of our questions in the chat was asking about the ability for malicious intent to be used with AI. So I know that Alessandra's touched on it with the fake news being spewed back in 2016 and still happening today, especially with deepfakes and stuff. So how do you think we can continuously tackle that, Alessandra?
It's a very important open research topic. So we don't have all the answers. It's like security. Security never stops. Every time we create a new secure protocol, there are those people that play with it and find vulnerabilities. And we learn those vulnerabilities, we fix them, and then other will come. So I think it needs to continue to be considered as a continuous process, where it needs to be taken seriously. The company already do it, but we need to do a different level from design phase to implementation, testing, and even more importantly, sometimes is we know that there are people that are trying to misuse anything that we do, from an object to a communication to an AI system or any system that we put available in the world. The real question is, can scientists, an AI scientist, think about the unintended consequences while they design their solution? Because for me, the biggest risk, it's not people trying to misuse, because there are very few that can do that. And that's a problem for sure. But an even bigger problem is that we are so in love with the problem that we're working on, so passionate to solve a specific problem, and we don't realize that that same technology, just moved a little bit, can be completely disruptive. So asking ourselves, which are the unintended consequences of creating this system? It's a very important security prevention step that every one of us should feel responsible being in the space of taking part of that discussion.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point you made there. Exactly, like it is a big problem, and sometimes you don't even see where the possibilities for malicious intent can appear, but it's best to keep informed. Leticia, you're trying to prevent accidents. Is there any way that you think you guys are doing more to prevent like malicious intent or even people getting into your system and corrupting it? How are you guys combating that?
Yeah, I could say that's a tough question because let's say on one side, yeah, you would think that if you have the purpose of preventing road accidents, so what could be possibly used wrongly about it? But yeah, I guess maybe one thing that I worry sometimes during my studies or doing my research work is at the back of my mind thinking, okay, I'm developing something for this specific application that I know is good, but can some part of it be taken by someone else and be used for a purpose that I don't like? For example, just give an example what I always thought about worries that I always had about image processing. Let's say one day I was going to develop a fantastic algorithm to detect small, tiny objects in satellite images, and then I think, oh, maybe this algorithm is going to be taken by someone that uses satellites for not so ethical purposes. But I think that's a problem that you can have with any sort of like technology or advancement, like the same, not to put it on the same level, but probably the same concept of when the scientists developed the nuclear bomb. Of course, the research of the science itself wasn't malicious, but it led to this sort of application. I think we should try to limit it as and regulate it as best as we can. But on the other side, we shouldn't be worried about it so much that we don't develop anything new. Let's put it this way. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much. We're just coming to the end of the evening now, so it's nearly 8:30. I'd just like to thank everyone for coming, thank our guests for being here. Really empowering, inspiring to hear all your stories. Very interesting insight being brought, as people in the chat were saying. I really hope everyone enjoyed the evening. Just quickly, if the three of you would like to maybe give some advice to young women, there's a lot of people from Trinity our age, maybe advice for women in AI and STEM, if you'd like to add anything or anything else. We'll start with Alessandra.
Don't give up. There is a lot of need to have you in the community. So if you're passionate, reach out. You don't need to do it alone. We are here. We have created those women-led community, not to isolate each other in some corner, but just to support each other in this development growth. So stick around, reach out for help. There are a lot of mentorship opportunity and people that are willing to support.
Yeah, and anyone here tonight, I definitely recommend checking out Women in AI Ireland. They're doing a really, really amazing stuff. And we're so glad to be partnered with them as well. But so Niamh, any advice you'd like to give to young women in AI or STEM robotics?
Yeah, I guess just aim really high. That's something that I used to I would always stop myself from doing something because I think, oh no, like I won't be able to do that, or you know, that's just not for me. But even looking back on myself, even just a few years ago, I wish I could just kick myself and say, just go for it. If you don't get it, so what? So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. A lot of people need to hear that you shouldn't underestimate yourself and that you should just kind of go for everything, you know. And Letizia, anything else you'd like to add in advice?
Yeah, just one little thing on top of what has already been said. For me, I think just do what you like, follow what you like. So if you love doing something, just try whatever you can to follow it and make that your job. And if sometimes you think you might think that you're an outlier, let's say, because in the group where you're studying or you're working, you're different than you feel like you're different than the rest of the other people. Don't think there's something wrong with you. Maybe there's something wrong with the society because it's not there yet.
Yeah, so inspiring to hear all this advice as well. Just again, thank you so much for everyone to everyone for coming. Please feel free to follow all of us on social media. We've tagged them in all our posts if you want to check out Formula Trinity. Yeah, a big thank you to our guests again. I had a really, really interesting night. Great insight got into all your experience in the industry. So yeah, just thank you again.
On that note, one second, Kat. We are hosting a competition coming up and we've started it so anyone beginner can join it. So if anyone does want to learn a bit of code, they can join our competition. It's called Grand Prix AI and it's on our website. But I think that would be a nice way for people to get involved with computer programming and learning about computer vision and perception as we cover all the topics there.
And well done to you, Formula Trinity, the representative that we have today, Katherine and Carrie. You're doing such an amazing and inspiring and creating an inspiring community. We really love to follow you and to support you in any way we can. So well done to you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.